I've actually still got my wristband on for last night. That's how bad I am. Sorry, apologies. So, as Rachel said, it's unbelievable that we haven't talked about TV at length. Well, we have talked about it, but a dedicated panel. So, great to have this esteemed panel here to talk about CTV, right? Obviously, CTV is pretty hot, as we all know. The M&A market in CTV in the US is on fire at the minute. Acquisitions are happening all over the place. Ben himself was taken over last year by IS, is that right? Yes?
Yep,
Congratulations,
I think so.
By the way.
Yep.
Yep, I just remember that. But there's still problems in terms of scaling, particularly outside the US. And I guess the panel is here to kind of talk about where we're at with CTV. So it's good to start off with that. Where do you think we are in the cycle right now, Ben, from your perspective, as a key infrastructure player in the space?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Good to be here with all of you. Lots happening. I think it's just a fascinating time. There's, I mean, we'll be talking about Netflix and Disney. There's announcements being made on the supply side. I think there are major shifts happening on the demand side. What I love most about this space is that it's user driven, right? So it's people every day that are buying smart TVs, that are figuring out that they can pay less to access more. And then we're all kind of scrambling to react to that. And that's the most exciting part, I think, is when users are really driving the change. And really, our job is to, at Publica, is to make publishers' lives as easy as possible and during that transition. But I think on the buy side, there are many things happening as well, which I think you guys will be able to talk about.
Okay, Alexandra, where do you think we are right now?
I definitely think we're going to call it the year CTV, as we like to call it in our industry. But yeah, I think it's at an exciting time, just like Ben said, especially because we've got a little bit more scale now. We can play around with more. It's not very much a vertical buy. You can start looking at context. There's, interesting audience targeting capabilities coming into play as well. So I think it's really exciting to be where we are and seeing it have it evolve from where we saw it maybe a couple years ago.
Aimee?
I think we're in a really exciting space. Obviously, with the pandemic, that sort of amplified some of the changes that we've seen with CTV. Consumers are engaging with content in a lot of different ways. They're they're across a range of devices and a range of platforms, and definitely from a planning perspective, we've had to become a lot more agile and, in terms of how we reach those audiences and we engage with them. And I think, as CTV becomes more addressable and coming from an addressable agency, it's exciting to have another touch point to reach and engage with our audiences. So I think it's an exciting space. We're definitely working with a lot of clients, who potentially have been big TV spenders, or they have a lot of online video presence, and it's about the education, getting them aware of it, and getting those tests on plan so we can really drive it forward.
Are your clients pushing that from your end? Are they going, we want more of this, we want more addressability? And the type of clients we're talking about, are they typical TV buyers? Because this is where we're sort of at right now, because our good friend Paul Gubbins talks about polls on when will TV when will TV become connected, or CTV become TV, or whatever way, addressable. But are clients pushing for that from your end when you're talking and go, we want this addressability, this is something we want to have?
Yeah, I think, with the pandemic, I think there was a lot of benefits for addressability and, those digital channels, because we could react really quickly to those, those sort of triggers within market. And I think, the likes of the big TV spenders, big AV spenders who, pre-pandemic were in the cinema, spending a lot on TV. CTV really presents a really strong premium environment for them to, extend that brand authority and really drive that household penetration with that engaged and immersed audience. So I think it's sort of twofold. I think, yes, those big clients definitely are aware of it. They're keen to learn more, but where we have those clients who are doing a lot of online video pre-roll out stream, essentially for me, CTV is just a really lovely, premium big screen format where the audience is really immersed and engaged, and it's just about including that as part of our holistic, our omni-channel video plans. So yeah, definitely some interest from some, others probably more of an education piece.
Yeah, I'll tell you my experience with CTV, right? And this is an interesting one. I have a Roku, right? And most of the apps on Roku, as you know, are paid for streaming subscription solutions. And there is one sort of ad-funded one, which is Bloomberg, right? And it was hilarious. There was a lady here yesterday from HP Enterprise, and she said her target segment is so small. People rarely say that. I've seen that ad about 1,000 feckin' times over the last 6 months. The frequency capping on that is insanely shit. And I sit there, I've actually seen the German ad. There's an English ad and there's a German ad. I've actually seen the woman speaking German. I'm going, what is going on here? Why are CTV ads so bad? Answer that question, please, Ben.
Well, yeah, you're not alone to experience that. I think there's a few reasons, right? First of all, for a very long time, there was a lack of technology, right? And that's why a company like Publica was able to come in the space and make a difference. Things like language aren't necessarily easy because you have to actually analyze the creatives, detect the language, and to do that, you have to have contextual AI that needs to be pretty advanced. But things like, deduping, those are actually pretty simple if you think of the break holistically as a series of ads that are going to be played back to back, and if you think of the session as a series of ads that you're going to show to a user, right? So if you have the capability to tie everything together, then you know what a user has seen before, and you're able to make decisions based on frequency capping. Most ad servers, unfortunately, weren't really built with that logic in mind, so that's why you're experiencing that today.
And actually, am I going to go to Discovery and see this ad? You're going to send me some decent ads. I want to see other ads. I actually wrote to Bloomberg and said, please, just show me another ad. How do you approach it then from your point of view? I mean, is the user very important to you when you sort of adopted technology and sort of serving these addressable ads?
Yeah, definitely. And because everything as a business that we do, we're very much thinking about data and audiences as well. So obviously we want to create a better user experience. We don't want too much churn in our subscribers. But yeah, there is a lot of input and thought into making sure that we have some type of frequency capping for our clients.
And is that a problem you're seeing, Aimee, as well, the frequency capping piece? Are you worried that someone like me will never buy HPE cloud infrastructure again?
I mean, I think there could be issues with frequency capping across a lot of channels. I go on YouTube and I see the same ad all the time. So not quite the one you're seeing in Bloomberg.
Which one do you see?
Oh, I don't want to say it in case someone's client, but you really need to sort that out.
Okay.
I think for us, because we are we're coming at it from an addressable standpoint, we're planning, we're moving those silos. We set our entire campaign up in one DSP, and that sort of gives us a lot more control of the settings we have in place and the frequency that we would potentially have across the campaign. And obviously it's slightly different when it's linear TV and CTV environments, but I think as measurement solutions get better and the insights we're getting back, I think for me it's really some of the insights we can get are already quite exciting. It's really interesting for a brand to see this is who I've reached in my linear TV campaign, but these are all the new users that I've reached in my CTV environments as well. So I think as measurement gets better and it's hopefully going to improve, and you won't be seeing that ad as many times as you are.
Yeah, Bloomberg's clearly need to talk to Publica.
Absolutely. Where are you guys?
Well, I don't know. We'll find out. Change of gears here, because the exciting stuff's coming, right? Okay, Disney's announced they're going to be, part of their business is going to be ad funded. Netflix have finally realized that there's not enough money in the world to pay for Stranger Things, and advertising isn't evil after all. How game changing is that? Arrival of two sort of epic, brand-driven organizations like that going to make a difference in the thing. And I don't want to take away from Alexandra's own company because they're doing something similar. But the sort of premium content that's coming will surely be a game changer.
Absolutely. I mean, just like any marketplace, when you dramatically increase the supply, there's going to be impacts on many different things. The biggest one is going to be price. I mean, just to give you guys an idea of scale, I took some of the I actually prepared for this panel a little bit.
So did I actually. That's why you got the funny story about the HPE thing,
That was great.
A professional that I am.
Netflix, 220 million subscribers, about 30% of viewing hours. In total, Disney is about 200 million with 20% of viewing hours. we didn't even talk about YouTube, right? But YouTube might be opening something.
We will talk about it in a minute. That's my last question. Thanks.
So, but 20% of viewing hours. So we're talking about a marketplace that the supply is going to more than double if these guys come to market with standard ad formats. Now, there are many nuances to that, right? Because there's essentially two ways you can buy TV inventory today. There's audience targeting and there's contextual targeting. From an audience perspective, there are going to be new households that haven't been available from an ad-supported perspective, but there are also many overlaps, right? So Discovery subscribers are also Netflix subscribers, so you're not really doubling the size of the audience. From a contextual standpoint, there are many unique shows and movies that you can't watch anywhere else. Now for Disney, there's also a ton of COPA inventory, right? Which historically the programmatic marketplace hasn't been too excited about. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. My personal guess is that a company like Netflix isn't going to come out with standard, mid-rolls and pre-rolls. I think they're going to do, custom formats, premium takeovers, things like that. So overall, I think it's great for the industry. And what's important to keep in mind is, sure, the supply is increasing, but CTV is still only about 20% of the total TV spend.
I was going to just sort of ask, do you think that would be all programmatically enabled? Because the reality is, and then we'll come on to that in a minute, because TV is a bigger beast than just CTV. But do you think that Netflix and Disney would come out of the box straight away and sort of offer something on a programmatic basis?
It's going to be I think it's going to be probably PMP based, but
I would say PGP if we're looking at it and thinking about it seriously. But I think one of the other great things about having an ad-funded model as well is that you get new access to advertisers that you didn't have before from the TV space. But I think what we have to be careful of, especially that measurement piece, is we're still working on our strategy, so we can't talk about it. But if you look at Disney and Netflix, they'll probably welcome, hey, you can, as an advertiser, you can come in, you can bring all your data. We've got data clean room activity, that's great, but I don't think you'll be able to get that data out as an advertiser. And so then you're working with very, maximum amount of walled gardens in the space, and that's going to be hellish from a measurement perspective.
And that would probably affect scale. And Aimee, you can talk about this better. Like that is like, you've all these fragmented walled gardens. As a buyer, how are you going to, do you think, I suppose this is where the likes of attention comes in, because we talked about attention during the week, new innovations that will help you sort of build attribution. But is that a big problem from where you're sitting in terms of particularly YouTube, and you might have Disney, so Disney will definitely be on the plan, but that is a big problem in terms of like measurement, as Alexandra talked about, and sort of attribution.
Yeah, I think fragmentation. That's obvious. It's completely apparent across the industry. It's not just CTV, and definitely from where we sit within the industry, we have to deal with client teams who do brand and performance. Even for me, working closely with the agency that I look after, there's different teams within the agency, different people are covering different things, different teams want to take responsibility for buying certain things. So I think coming from an addressable background and planning these channels, it's ultimately our responsibility to plan without these silos. The audience, the client's audience and their KPIs and business objectives are most important. So we have to, identify where we can find that audience, what screen they're going to be consuming content on, and make sure we're planning that to really optimize and to deliver towards those KPIs. And I think Netflix is really exciting. I think, when we talk about the premium nature of CTV, I think Netflix and Disney's only going to add to that. I'm really, as you mentioned, it's going to be bought on a PMP basis, and I'm really excited to see that brought to life, what sort of performance and what sort of insight we'll get off the back of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely dropping my subscription when ads come from Netflix.
Yeah.
It's not worth it, honestly. Disney is.
Even with the new Stranger Things?
I think Stranger Things is not that good. Obi-Wan Kenobi, come on. Let's seriously, Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fighting. Come on. That doesn't compare to a bunch of kids running around battling some alien.
What about Peaky Blinders?
Yeah, Peaky Blinders is great. I can see that in the BBC. Anyway, the thing is, so let's go back to that measurement piece, because that's a huge issue, right? And I want to talk, actually, I'll shift into the aggregation piece, because TV is just not CTV, right? TV is as linear, it's walled gardens. How are we going to fix that? How do you bring all that together? Are we going to have to figure out a way to walk across those channels? Because, Alexandra, we'll come to you first, because you're talking about the big big box sort of effect. So you've got linear and you've got CTV, and you know with Discovery you've got both. So how are you approaching that from a selling point of view?
Yeah, so we're definitely hopefully moving towards this view of the big screen. So is that CTV? Is that linear? Is that addressable linear? Because that's something that my team works on quite closely. So it's finding that audience across any of those areas and being able to link them. And the things that we think about is, well, what can we do in linear? Let's make it a little bit better of how you can buy it from a GRP Nielsen Barb status. But how are we able to have some type of targeting, mostly contextual, was probably going to be the answer, to link all of those things together for us. So we are thinking about it. We're thinking about how can we reach an audience, and it doesn't matter what screen it is, because at the end of the day, it's about making an impact and be much more sustainable. As one of the key themes that we were hearing about earlier.
Ben, we'll go to you because obviously you're deeply embedded in the CTV space. But do you think about that entire ecosystem, how you bring all that together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm now an IAS employee, which is a measurement company, and their core business is to provide holistic measurement to the buy side. So absolutely, it's been actually fascinating for me to see, frankly, how little buyers get today when they buy CTV, and working with publishers to help educate the market on, hey, we're not asking you to share crazy things, just basic information about where the ad ran. And there are many reasons why that can be difficult in some cases for a publisher, particularly in fast environments, to share things like title and an episode and things like that. But I think that's where clean rooms come in. That's where there are many smart ways to let buyers know what they're buying. And I think we're moving in the right direction now that both sides are finally talking to each other.
And from the execution side, Aimee, like you're the go-to addressable guru down there at your agency. So the client said, buy me addressable. But do you have to work, how is that relationship with the traditional TV? Because that's the kind of bleeds into this, right? Well, we aggregate quite a lot of the TV inventory, but do you work closely with the TV teams then? And what's that relationship look like? Are they worried? Are they looking over their shoulder to you going, she's going to take my spend?
I think, as any of the more traditional channels become more data-led and more addressable, we do, of course, have to work really closely with those, those traditional specialists. But when it comes to planning, CTV and linear, I think, can work really well together. We've got, just to give you an example of a campaign that we're actually working on now to get live. It was supposed to go live last week, but it will be live ASAP. It's a really nice example with the linear TV ad is really doing like a national broadcast message, is getting out there, it's getting the message of the brand out there. And where CTV has been playing in, it's, that addressable is really data-led. And we're working with Innovid to bring in a dynamic CTV campaign, and it's not, it's specific to the local regions, and within that content we'll pull in, local differences to really drive that engagement amongst the audience that is going to be consuming that content. And I think it's a level of personalization, but it really shows how linear can do that national job, and the CTV can be that more, relevant, that more engaging piece of content towards those target audiences.
So then working in tandem effectively would be sort of the future potentially of sort of the execution piece.
Yeah, I think I think that's an example of it working in tandem. But again, going back to the measurement piece, we can't reach 100% of our audiences via linear TV alone, and having another addressable channel just gives us another touch point to extend that campaign message, hit our clients' objectives and get that message into other households. When you look at the stats, 4 in 5 households now have a smart TV, and the channel obviously itself has grown quite a bit in recent years, so it presents a massive opportunity, and it seems like one that's only going to gain a momentum, and it's definitely a space that we don't want brands to miss out on. So can work in tandem and in addition to an incrementality perspective as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about supply chain for a minute because ad tech's obviously looking at TV with greedy eyes because it's huge budgets, potentially huge margins, but the take rate in display is off the charts in terms of, studies range from like 30p in the pound to 50p in the pound. I just don't see how that's going to be viable when you've got £50 CPMs in TV and 25 is going to ad tech. I just don't see how it happens. And likewise, the supply chain, do you really need to have an SSP and a DSP in that chain, or could, obviously what the trade desk is doing with straight integration to supply, is it just better off having an ad server to kind of like optimize for you and doing straight ad server integration? I want to talk about that, Ben, because obviously you're at the coalface in that. Do you see that collapse happening, or do you think that there's going to be less sort of players in that supply chain?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of movement happening, right? You see ad servers buying SSPs and now even DSPs. You see, SSPs now selling straight to agencies. You see DSPs going straight to publishers. So it's evolving. I think at the end of the day, the companies that create value are going to be successful. And I think, as publishers start to have more and more control over the auction, which is, I think, incredibly important because that's how their inventory is sold, to Remy's point earlier, right? It's what you're passing in a bid request is what is going to determine whether or not you get an ad back, right? So having that control is very important. And then it's all about whether or not the ad tech vendors involved are creating value. I think if they're not, sooner or later, they're going to be in trouble. But as long as you're enabling, better targeting, you're enabling better measurement, things like that, then I think you're in good shape. So I'm not sure how many logos up there are involved, but
well, there's a few, and they're probably all vying. But Boris is obviously talking about that collapse of the supply chain. I was going to come into you because obviously you use a lot of these vendors. Do you see a need to have so many people in that chain? And you're obviously price sensitive, right? You don't want to be losing a ton of money in the transaction.
No, but it is pretty much still needed, and it is asked for by our clients. So we definitely need to have still involved in the chain. But I think being smart about it and looking at different mediation tools is probably going to be the way to kind of help us move forward. And also, create value. You want to work with partners that help create value for you.
And the open marketplace obviously comes into it for a lot of beating. Do you see more inventory being put on that open marketplace? Do you need to? Because I just sense that, with Aimee, and we're trying to broaden the sort of the class of buyer, like the numbers of buyers who can just plug in and buy TV inventory. It's still very much a few people involved, as opposed to like the display world. But it's a case of like having an open marketplace allows you as a seller to get access to more buyers that your sales team can't hit.
Yeah, that's quite sensitive. I'm very much against an open marketplace when it comes to premium inventory like CTV and going into addressable as well, because you're putting yourself up for a lot of fraudulent activity, and that's kind of the last thing we would want and need from our side. So I think enabling it from a PG level, having some PMPs there, working with the different SSPs and DSPs who I know have different libraries available, I think utilizing those opportunities is probably going to be better than being like, hey, buy our inventory in an open marketplace. But that's right now. This whole industry is always changing. So in a couple of years, it could be, this is the safest open marketplace we've ever seen. But at this point, I personally am very much against it.
Okay, we'll finish with one last question because I need to ask this question about the YouTube announcement this week. Aimee, we'll start with you because this is probably irrelevant to you most in the panel. The Google announced that they're going to basically allow third parties to access YouTube inventory. How significant is that for you as a buyer? Like, I know that a lot of agencies, and I don't want you to kind of disclose who you're using, but a lot of agencies are tethered to Google because of the YouTube thing, because YouTube is a significant part of the CTV ecosystem. We haven't really talked about that. But how significant do you think that news is that you might be able to access YouTube inventory via a non-Google DSP route?
I mean, that is exciting. There's, for the last few years, definitely it's been very much, if we want to access YouTube, we have to do a certain way. So definitely, as and when the brief comes up and we work with our clients, if it's the right solution for them to be for their wider plan, their wider video plan, the wider addressable plan, then definitely it's something to be considered. But it's definitely something from this side we definitely need to learn more about. We need to understand the nuances and then take it from there, educate clients and make them decisions on our brief responses and strategies.
Ben, do you think it's a huge thing for CTV or for the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I'm just interested to see what exactly this announcement means. Which parties are going to become involved, right? Is it just a new DSP? Are we talking about another ad server than Google Ad Manager? So for now, it's hard to say, but yeah, if it's open to more vendors, I think it can only be a good thing for competition.
And like how people can buy and what data is being flown through and what you can access. If it's just here's access to inventory, I don't think that's going to create any value for.
Yeah, I think Google are trying to basically throw the legislators off. Anyway, on that note, we'll just finish up. I wanted to say a big thank you to the panelists. We could sit here all day and talk about this, but like unfortunately we've condensed it and fairly high level. We got a good breadth of where we are in the CTV world. And by the way, this is Aimee's first panel, so big round of applause for Aimee first. She did a great job. Well done, Aimee. And big round of applause for the rest of our panelists. Thank you, guys. These are seasoned pros, by the way. These are like I'm the amateur here. A round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.